Welcome to Hustle and Flow with Heather Hubbard, episode 160. Hi, I'm Heather Hubbard, and I was a litigator, partner, and practice group leader at an AmLaw 200 firm. I know what it takes to rise to the top. I also know all too well the toll it can take on your personal life. So how do you shine bright without burning out? How do you embrace your ambition without selling your soul? You're listening to the Hustle and Flow podcast. Welcome back. I am your host, Heather Hubbard, and I have a very special guest with us today. Quickly, though, before we get to that, I wanted to remind you that enrollment for the Get It Done Challenge membership, it's tomorrow, April 15th. So we actually already started. We got kicked off on April 12th, but because of the way the week and the prizes and everything works, you have to get in by tomorrow, April 15th. So if you are hearing this in time and you are wanting to get in, go to getitdonechallenge.com and enroll. And if you're listening to this after the fact, you're going to have to wait until we open up the next quarter if there is room. But you can get on the wait list also at getitdonechallenge.com if you have missed that cutoff. Okay, let's get to today's guest. Autumn Witt Boyd is an intellectual property attorney who started her own firm, the AWB firm, for online businesses to help protect their brand, content, and courses. She is the host of the Legal Roadmap podcast, and she happens to be a longtime friend. We met in our very first year of law school at Vanderbilt, and we have remained good friends. I have hired her as my attorney, and she has participated in 2 years of my highest level masterminds. So Autumn has done amazing work in building a law firm and brand, really representing some of the largest names in the online business arena, including Amy Porterfield and Chalene Johnson and myself, among many other big names. So I'm super excited to have her on today. Autumn, welcome to Hustle and Flow.
I'm delighted to be here. Hi, Heather.
All right. So there is so much to discuss, but let's just jump into how you started the firm that you're in. So if you'll just give folks some background as to what your career journey looked like and how you ended up starting your own firm.
Yeah, so I had a very typical lawyer path in the beginning. I had a federal judge clerkship, which brought me to Chattanooga, Tennessee, where I still live. And I wanted to be a litigator because that was the exciting, flashy, sexy part of law. I left my clerkship and took a job here in Chattanooga for a couple of years at a big firm doing big commercial litigation. And then I'd always wanted to do intellectual property work. It just interested me and I thought it was fun. I have a background in music. And so I just always had kind of been attracted to it. And there wasn't a lot of that at the firm where I was working. There's frankly not a lot in Chattanooga. So I was actually recruited away by a firm that specialized in copyright litigation. We had been local counsel for them on a case involving a local painter. So I left and went to that job, and that firm was actually kind of a virtual law firm. So they were based, one partner was in Colorado and one was in Pennsylvania. They asked me if I wanted to move, and my now husband had actually just moved to Chattanooga from Colorado. So who actually, Heather, was there when we met. We met at a mutual friend's wedding.
That's right.
So I said, no, we're not moving. And they allowed me to work virtually. So it was a great setup. I was young. I had, no other responsibilities from work. The work was really interesting and fun. I got to work from home in my yoga pants, and I got to do a lot of travel. I got to do a lot more at that job than I probably would have if I'd stayed at the larger law firm. I got thrown into depositions and a lot of responsibility. So it was a really great job for a while. And then in 2011, I had twin babies, which just kind of changed everything, as it often does when we add new little people into the mix. And so for a while, really, it still was a great job because I could telecommute. If the kids were sick, I could be home with them, and I was able to kind of keep my routine. But as our cases matured, there was more travel. We actually had a trial, about 4-week trial in Philadelphia. that I was traveling for. And the work hours and everything just became really, really difficult for our family. And my husband is amazing and he is an entrepreneur as well. But I remember it clear as day. We went to dinner and it was while I was in preparation for that trial. And he just looked at me and he was like, this isn't working. And I'm not telling you what you got to do, but something's got to change. And I had been telling him for about a year, I'd been asking my bosses for more support, for more help, because I was working probably 60 to 80 hours on a regular basis, along with the travel. And they kept saying, oh, we'll get more help. But like nothing was changing. So he finally, my husband said, you've been saying it's going to get better and it hasn't gotten better. And I think, we've got to make some changes. So I wanted to get past that trial because I knew it would be a great experience. And I felt like I'd made that commitment and I wanted to see it through. I really liked the client as well. So we ended up winning that trial. Everybody survived. It was tough, but we survived. And then literally we went to the beach the week after that trial finished. And I brought along Danielle Laporte's book, The Desire Map, which it's like a workbook. And I sat down and I worked through that book. I had some other friends. We were in kind of a book club and it was miraculous timing because I really needed it. Yeah. And I sat down and I worked every day when my boys would nap, I would sit down with a glass of wine and that book and figure out like, what did I like about my job? What didn't I like about my job? What did I like about my life and my community? It was kind of like everything was on the table. I had thought about leaving law. I'm really active in volunteer in my community and I'd done some public relations work. I have a journalism background. So I was like, what would it look like to go do something totally different? But where I landed was there were parts of law that I really liked and I decided not to leave. I looked for some other jobs. I spent a month or two just kind of looking for jobs because we really didn't want to move. Our families are all in Chattanooga now, or most of them are. And so it's really helpful to have that extra grandparent support. So I looked around, didn't find anything, frankly, that looked very appealing. And so my husband, again, gave me a little shove being an entrepreneur. And he said, I think you can start your own firm. I think you can make this work. And so I spent a couple months researching. I'm a high fact finder. So I did some research. I kind of mapped out a plan, built my own website, made my own marketing materials and did a little preparation and then pulled the trigger. So that was I started my firm in February 2015. And I should mention at the same time, Heather and I have been friends a long time. We actually went to law school together. So Heather was also going through a transition. And so we did a lot of talking about both of our next steps. And I think that also gave me some encouragement, that we can try new things and it'll all work out.
I will never forget September 2014. I was in a cab in New York City going from the airport to a workshop where I knew that I was considering leaving my firm to start my own business. And I got a phone call from you. And you were like, hey, I'm thinking about going out on my own. And It was a great conversation. And I think we both really were moving forward at that point. So it's kind of been exciting to track that. Now,
to be on parallel paths. It's been fun.
Yes. Now, let me ask, because I might have my timing off. So Vivian, when she came along, was that the next year? Was that 2016?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have a daughter who's almost 4. Yeah. She was born in April of 2016. And frankly, that was kind of another piece of this puzzle. I'd really wanted to have another child, and we just literally did not have the capacity in our lives when I was working that other job. There was no way to add one more thing. And my husband kind of looked at me like I was crazy every time I would tell him I wanted another one. So I had actually started resigning myself to like, this is just going to be our family and that's okay. And then we went away for our anniversary in 2015 in May. And my husband, and we like went out to dinner, no kids. And my husband said to me, I've been thinking and I've been talking to some friends. And I think if we want to have another kid, we should just do it. I don't think we'll regret it. And I think now's the time. And so I was like, okay. And Vivian was born about a year later.
All right. So I want to talk about two things. I want to back up. I want to talk about the firm because you've done it in a very different way and you've been very successful at it. And then I want to talk about as well, once we get through that first part, let's go back to what it looks like to go on maternity leave when you're 1 year in to a brand new business. Okay. But let's go back though to February 2015. From your branding, your website, the way you set up your firm, it is not traditional. It is not standard. It is not typical for a law firm. You really embrace I am here for creatives and I am a creative person and this is not your typical male stuffy, traditional thing. So tell us about how you decided to do that, whether you had any fears around doing it differently or if you were just like, no, this is how I'm doing it. And what was your thought process in setting all of that up and putting yourself out there in a new and different way?
Yeah. Well, so the biggest change I made right away was I decided I didn't want to do litigation anymore. Because what I found working through the Desire Map workbook was that it was the part I liked least about lawyering was fighting with opposing counsel. So that was my first big shift was I switched to a transactional practice and I took 0 clients from my last firm. So I really was building from nothing. So I thought about what are my strengths? I loved talking to clients. I loved helping them figure out their problems. I loved teaching them about, copyrights and trademarks. So I'm a big fan of figuring out what you're good at and doubling down on that. So that's what I decided to do right away. And I thought that Chattanooga has a really thriving startup community. So I thought that my skills would be a good fit for those clients. Turned out not to be true. So it turns out startups don't have any money and they don't like to at least in the early stages, they don't have any money and they don't really like to listen to professional advisors. They just kind of want to do their own thing. So I pivoted very quickly and I was I love podcasts. I've been listening to podcasts for years and years. And so I was listening to a ton of business podcasts because I didn't go to business school. I have a journalism degree. I had never really been involved in any of the business sides of the law firms where I worked. So I didn't know anything about marketing or sales or how to make a budget or how to read a P&L, all those things I was kind of just absorbing as much as I could from listening to podcasts. And a lot of the podcasts that I enjoyed were led by women and had more of a creative business audience. And, they weren't for lawyers. So the Being Boss podcast was one that I really enjoyed early on. And so this was back in 2015. Facebook groups were kind of all the rage. Yep. So a lot of these podcasts had communities on Facebook that went along with them. And so I was just joining the groups to ask questions and learn. And I found there were tons of people asking legal questions and there were no other lawyers there.
Yep.
So it really was this huge blue ocean that made it very easy for me to make a quick pivot from working with startups when that clearly wasn't going to be a good fit to these are people who are hungry for legal help. They are so nice and kind and eager to learn. They're open to taking advice. They're kind of dreamy dream clients, honestly. And so I just started being helpful in the Facebook groups. I started getting clients. I started working on projects and just kind of learned what they needed. So it turned very quickly to that audience and I grew really quickly in that first year or so.
And when did you start the podcast?
So that's what I was going to say. My next step, that was actually after I had Vivian. So like fall of 2016. And I remember it like clear as bell. I was driving somewhere after I'd had her listening to a podcast and they were talking about, should you start a podcast? And I was like, I never thought I had the bandwidth for this, but writing blogs takes a long time. And so I'm not doing that as much as I should. And I know I need to be putting out content to market and be helpful, but I, just wasn't doing it as much. And I was like, and I'd been a guest on a lot of podcasts and I enjoyed that. And so I was like, I think maybe I can start a podcast. Yeah. So we started the Legal Roadmap podcast in 2016.
So one of my favorite stories, you were in the mastermind for 2 years, is the Chalene Johnson story. Will you share that?
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah.
So this is insane. And I did not believe it when it happened. But so Chalene Johnson, what's so funny is after I had Vivian and I was trying to lose my baby weight, I watched her exercise videos to lose my baby weight. So I've been a fan of hers for a long time. She is a huge exercise instructor and she's kind of shifted her business. Now she teaches entrepreneurs and has a couple other business lines, but she is the real deal. She's a real business owner. So I got an email in my inbox from someone who said they were on Chalene Johnson's team and that Chalene had listened to the Legal Roadmap podcast and was a huge fan of me. And I read it and I was like, there is no way this is true. And so the email was actually pitching me to come on her podcast, to come on Chalene's podcast. Now, Chalene has a huge audience, has a huge reach. She's a superstar in the online business world. And so I just could not believe it. But of course I responded, yes, of course, I'd be happy to. All the while thinking like, there's no way Chalene has really listened to my podcast. But so then I got on with Chalene. She is also very kind and a really smart question asker. And she said, I knew my audience needed to learn about legal. And I wanted someone who knew about trademarks. And so I was just, searching on iTunes and I typed trademarks into the search bar and yours came up and I listened to a couple episodes and I really liked what you were about. So it was actually true. It was insane. And I recorded 2 episodes for her podcast right then. That was when GDPR was coming out. So we did a GDPR episode and it was just phenomenal. And then she has since become a client. So it's just crazy the way things can kind of have spider webs out on the internet that you would never expect.
Part of why I love that story, though, is 1, you never know who's listening. And 2, it goes to show that because, there are a ton of podcasts out there. There are a ton of people who do Facebook Lives and whatever else. But I do think that it goes to show that the more of an expert you can be, right? When you're really niche down, like she's searching for trademarks. And when you provide amazing value, right? Like when you're really good at what you do and you show that off for free, you will rise to the top because people will notice it and see it. And I think that's one thing you do very, very well is you make things very easy to understand and you provide a ton of free and valuable content.
Thank you. Yeah, we work really hard at it. And that's been, I think, a key to our success for sure.
So right now, I'm looking at the time and I've got so much I want to cover. So right now, your business model, you have a few things going on. We're still going back to Vivian too. So you have a few things going on. You do contract templates that people can buy online. And then you have, just people can hire you. And I think, your client base has really evolved where, you do represent people like Shalene and Amy Porterfield and others in this online business space. Kind of talk to us about that diversification and having both some like lower level offerings, online offerings, as well as, providing the true one-to-one and retainer services for very successful businesses.
Yeah. So I created contract templates from the get-go, and those are a digital product. We use a tool on our website where you can purchase them and you get them right away. So it's very easy and very hands-off for us. Once we have created them, all we have to do is market them. But there's no additional work to sell one versus selling 1,000. So I wanted that to be part of my business, partly because just, I was drinking the water from the online business pool where everyone says to scale, you need something that doesn't require your immediate attention. And it's been, it's grown slowly, but it's become a significant part of our revenue. And this year, 2020, we're really doubling down on those and trying to really grow those with some new marketing initiatives. And what I love about them is when someone sends us an email or contacts me on Facebook and says, hey, I want to hire you for XYZ contract. And then I tell them our pricing, which, we're really good at what we do. We're not inexpensive. We're often out of reach, especially for people who are just starting or just, don't have a high revenue business yet. And honestly, I don't think that those people should hire us for one-on-one services. It doesn't make sense in their budget. So to be able to have something that's still really useful and totally affordable, but is still going to get them, I call it, I say it gets them 99% of the way there. Like they may make some mistakes when they're filling it in, but these people are probably never going to go to court anyway. It's going to give them really great protection, make them feel really good working with their clients or however else they're using the templates. And so I just love having it as a resource as part of our business model. It's kind of, the bottom of our pyramid. And then a lot of times as people kind of grow up in their business, maybe they've used our template and they come back to us to help research an issue, or now they're ready for a custom contract. They just need a little more one-on-one advice. So what I found is that as people grow with us, they're able to kind of move through and hire us for the one-on-one services too. So at the one-on-one level, we are kind of an old school firm, even though we work virtually. We're very new school in the technology, but the client service at the end of the day is pretty old school. It's very hands-on. It's very high touch. We do a lot of client phone calls and we can do really high level legal work. There's one, we'll talk about the team in a minute, I'm sure.
Yep.
I have another attorney who works with me now who has a different focus than I do. So we're able to do a lot for our clients, which I really love.
And I will say I'm a client, right? So I love your all services. And I think you do such a great job for everything from onboarding to, just gifts that you give and the videos that you provide and all along the way, the communication. And it really is a well-oiled machine. And I think a great example of how you truly can run an online and virtual law firm. And you have like the VIP services as well, which I did, like the VIP day, where if you want to go, right, I went to Chattanooga and we just spent the whole day knocking things out. So I love the diversification and everything that you've set up. So before we move to the team and to, having babies when you have your own company, I wanted to share, because you said early on that you believe in doubling down on your strengths, and I do as well. And so, when you were in the mastermind, there was the discussion of how do I get even more of the really influential clients? And I was wondering if you'd be willing to share the story of the influencer dinner that you hosted in San Diego after one of our masterminds in an effort to truly double down on your strengths and how that worked out.
Yeah. So I will give all credit to Heather. This was her idea, but we executed it. And it was, being in the room with people, I always think is the best way to network and find new clients, because there's just such a different level of trust. And, when people get to know you, if they love you, it's just a no-brainer to hire you. And I was at a point, this was almost 2 years ago, like a year and a half, 2 years ago, where my babies were little and I wasn't traveling that much. So going to conferences and things like that were just a challenge. But I had kind of a critical mass of people who were ideal clients or who were already my clients in San Diego. And I was going to be there anyway for a gathering of Heather's Mastermind. So we kind of put our heads together and made a dream wish list. If we could invite the people we would just love to meet and love to hang out with, get them all together in a room and just let the magic happen. So I reached out to a couple of my existing clients who had connections. I was like one person away from a lot of the people that I wanted to invite to the dinner. So I kind of leaned on my existing clients and asked them, would you invite this person? Tell them I'm great. Tell them it's going to be worth their time. Tell them I'm not crazy, and the benefit to them was really getting together in person with other people that it's just, a lot of us, when we work online, we end up kind of hunkered down in our solo offices. And unless it's a conference or something, we don't spend that much time just talking business or getting together and getting to know each other. So that was kind of the benefit that we put out there for them. So I had a client who actually wasn't able to come, who's based in Nashville, but she invited Amy Porterfield and kind of twisted her arm a little bit. And then I had another client who invited Pat Flynn, and she was able to come. She also knows Amy Porterfield. So it's kind of like we joke that the online world is kind of incestuous. Like everybody knows everyone, everyone hires everyone. And so, there were kind of enough connections. And then I asked other people, if you have any suggestions of people who would be great, please let me know. We have a little extra room. And so I ended up making a couple new connections with people that were not on my radar at all, but have been wonderful to just get to know, that I've developed deeper relationships with. Some of them have become clients, some of them have just become friends. But we ended up, I think, with maybe 12 people at that dinner, which was amazing. And I have also, I can't remember which test, Heather probably knows which test, but Prestige is one of my high. Yes, the Fascinate test. And so we made it really nice. It was kind of fancy. And I just wanted it to be an amazing experience for them and to kind of show that our firm, is really great. And that I wanted the level of that dinner to kind of match the level of service that we provide. And so I did have assigned seating, and I sat myself across from Amy Porterfield. She was the one person that I really wanted to come away just with a connection to. And so I remember she looked at me and she said, well, tell me what are the kinds of clients you want to work with, or who are you trying to connect with? And I just looked at her and I said, Amy Porterfield. And she laughed and she was like, oh, you're serious? And I was like, yeah, I would love to work with you. Like, I don't know if you have an attorney, but if you're open, we can definitely talk about that. She just dove right in, and she sent me an email right after I got home saying, hey, I have a trademark I need to work on. I'd love to hire you. So it was insane that it worked out like that.
I don't actually think it's insane. Here's the deal, right? I always laugh because I give people strategy all day long, and so many people won't actually execute. Right? And so much of it is mindset, because people will create these stories in their heads of, oh, who am I to do that? Mm-hmm. Or I can't possibly reach out and ask that person for a favor, or to make that introduction, or to invite that person to this dinner. I can't do that. And then how am I going to host this? And how can I say to Amy Porterfield, I want you as a client, when she asks that question? Right? So
to be clear, I had all of those feelings, and Heather coached me through all of that.
Yes, but kudos to you for moving through it and actually doing it, because it has paid off so well. And so many of us, because we all have fears, we don't want to move forward through it. So I just love that you took the action even when you were afraid, and it has just paid off so well. So let's talk about your team, because you are virtual. Mm-hmm. What does your team look like? And do you have any tips or tricks for really managing a virtual team?
Yes. So I brought on my first team member in 2016, right before I had Vivian, because I wanted to have a maternity leave. So this kind of hooks back into something we mentioned earlier. Up till that point, I had no help, and it was kind of fine. I had a pretty manageable client load. I was working a lot, but not crazy. So I brought on a virtual assistant, although she is local to Chattanooga, which I wasn't tied to, but has turned out to be really great, because now she's still with me and she does come into the office every now and then. But I brought her on really just for a couple hours a week, which was terrifying, because up to that point I had no payroll except myself. But I just wanted someone to kind of check my email, make sure that things were getting processed while I was on maternity leave, because I didn't want to have to, I didn't know what kind of baby I was going to get. My twins were really tough. Vivian turned out to be a total dream baby. But I was just worried, if I'm not sleeping and I'm in baby land and just can't check email every day, I didn't want any balls to be dropped. I'd wrapped up on my projects, but I just still wanted to make sure to be available if anybody needed anything. So Brooke, who is wonderful, came on just to do that. And then as we got to know each other and I learned what she's great at, she took over sending out invoices. She took over kind of being the first person that our potential clients interact with. She kind of screens all of those inquiries. And she's really wonderful at tech. So she built the current version of our website. She handles all of the back end things that if I'm researching, I will spend 12 hours and like go down the rabbit hole. And I'm also not very good at it. So she just has been a wonderful asset to our team. So she was the first one I brought on. And then I realized as we have gotten busier that I really needed more help with actually the legal work. So I've toyed around. I've kind of tried different things. The first hire I made was to bring on another attorney just on a contract basis. So it's kind of one by one on projects. That turned out not to be a great fit because she was juggling a lot of other responsibilities. And so I kind of was always at the bottom of her list, which, live and learn. And then I brought on paralegal, which has turned out to be, I probably should have done that before the attorney, frankly, because she does all of our project management. She tracks our deadlines. She was not an IP paralegal, but she's a really quick learner. So she now does a lot of our kind of application drafting and things like that for our copyrights and trademarks. So she actually can do a lot of the legal work, with our supervision. So that has been hugely helpful. And also I call her my follow-up ninja. Her name's Diane. And so she, like if we're waiting on something from the client or if we're waiting on something from opposing counsel or whatever, she tracks all of that and kind of makes sure that things keep moving, which I am not great at. So kind of filling in people with other skill sets that I don't have. I think that would be my number one tip is look at things that you're bad at. And, hire people who enjoy those things and are good at them. Because, follow-up was always the last thing on my list because I just hate it and I'm not great at it. But Diane loves it. So we built that out. And then eventually we got busier and I really needed help with someone that I could just turn an entire project over to. So Diane can, there's rules with what paralegals can and can't do on their own. So I really found that I needed someone who could take a call with a client or, be another lawyer. Michelle's been with me about 2.5 years, and her background is labor and employment, which I thought that I would teach her intellectual property law and we wouldn't really use her for labor and employment, but she has turned out to be such an asset as we're working with bigger clients like Shalene, like Amy Porterfield, who have these growing teams. That has been actually a huge resource for our clients. But I will tell you, Heather, a couple years ago, I remember one of my clients was doing a challenge, like, what would you imagine? Like, what's the wildest dream that you have for your business? And I wrote down that I wanted to build an all-girl band, like a team to support this firm. And I looked around, been almost 2 years ago now, and we did a firm retreat. And I looked around the room and I was like, oh my gosh, I've built this all-girl band. And like, we all get along. There's no drama. Everybody is wonderful and helpful and has a good attitude. And so, it's taken a while to get there. And there's been some missteps along the way. But like you said, we really are running like a well-oiled machine now, and it makes everything so easy. It's wonderful.
All right. So let's talk about Vivian.
Yes.
So you're 1 year into this brand new business and you're about to have a baby. So what did that look like for you? How did you set things up so that you could run a business and have a baby?
Yeah. So it would look different with the team I have now. At that time, I really was a true solo. So I started telling my clients probably 3 or 4 months before I was going to have her. I just wanted to be really transparent and open to just say, I'm having this baby. This is my plan, but, I don't really know what's going to happen. Things can be unpredictable, but my goal was to wrap up all of our projects about a month before her due date. My boys came 3 weeks early. They were twins. So I just was worried, if she did come early, I didn't want to leave anyone hanging with anything unfinished. So we did that. I had to turn down some work that came in right at the end. And some people were really ugly about that, which surprised me. But I was kind of like, I'm not taking on a new project if I'm not sure I'm going to finish it. And I have since learned we now have I have a no assholes policy, which I put into effect probably right around maybe 2 years ago. And so what I now know is if people are difficult during the, potential client, if we're talking and during the sales process and they're difficult, like that's a big red flag. So, those people who were really ugly to me about not taking their project because I was about to have a baby, those would not have been great clients to work with anyway. So now I know that. I used to be a little more open to taking on more. But yeah, so my clients were lovely. Everyone was very understanding. And as it turned out, Vivian was not early. So I had like 3 weeks of kind of twiddling my thumbs at home, which I'm a pretty go-getter. I'm not good at sitting still. So I had this whole list of projects that, you feel like you never have time for. I had a whole list of projects and then I finished all the projects. And I said like a week before she came, but she came. And like I said, she was a really, really easy baby. She was a good sleeper. We got very lucky. So I had planned on taking 1 month off, like totally. And I ended up, because she was such an easy baby and I was a little bit bored, I had a couple clients who were like, no rush, get to this when you can, but could you do XYZ for me? And so I started taking a little bit of work when I was still, quote unquote, on maternity leave. And that was nice to I had money in the bank, like I had saved and kind of planned I figured I might have 2 or 3 months of like really no revenue or very low revenue. Mm-hmm. So I'd prepared for that, but that helped me ramp back up a little quicker. And I was really worried that, I would take that pause and my clients would forget about me and no one would hire me. And that was just not the case at all. It came back really quickly when I kind of announced like, hey, I'm back in business. I did ease back in, which was helpful. I'm lucky to have my mom here in town. And so she was, I can't remember if it was 2 days or 3 days, but we had a couple of days a week where she would come to my house and take care of Vivian. I was breastfeeding, so I would kind of take breaks to do that. But that allowed me to kind of slide back in. And then she started daycare around 4 or 5 months. And then I was kind of back to full time at that point.
So now you've got 3 kids,
mm-hmm.
2 twin boys. Yep. And as we are recording this, we are currently in coronavirus shutdown. So
I was about to say, can you hear my sigh?
Any tips for anyone about, running a business and also raising children?
Yeah. So, normally in normal times, I am very lucky and we have made decisions that, we have full-time childcare for all of our kids. So I do have a pretty regular schedule and I'm not usually working with them around. Now, of course, if somebody's sick or, we have a weird day off school here and there, the flexibility of my own business to allow me to juggle those things is priceless. So I very much appreciate those. We're in a bit of uncharted territory with having kids out of school for a month. So I don't know. I had never intended to become a homeschooler, but here we are. I will say kids are really flexible and adaptable. We're only on day 2, so ask me in a couple weeks, but they have really just adapted to their new schedule. And both my boys have ADD and ADHD, so we have to keep them moving, which has been okay. And they like having the predictability of a schedule. So we did make kind of a rough schedule that we've been sticking to of family time, exercise time, fun time, a little bit of academic time. I'm frankly not sweating the academics very much. But I would just say, I think law as a profession, you do have a fair amount of autonomy over your own schedule, but it also is very time intense. And so we're doing some time shifting right now where I'll probably start getting up early and doing a little work before the kids get up, maybe working a little at night, which is not my favorite, but we're really trying to keep the firm going. Our clients still need us. So I'm just trying to do the best we can.
All right. So I know we're out of time, but so we have lawyers who listen and I'm sure they'll just be curious and want to check out what you're doing. And then we have a lot of non-lawyers who very well may have needs. So just share with everyone the best way to find you, to connect with you, all that good stuff.
Yeah. So our website, everything is there. It's awbfirm.com. It's my initials. And the Legal Roadmap podcast is a great resource if you need help with anything around your business, legal or intellectual property. And then we also have interviews. If you're curious about online business, I interview a lot of my clients and a lot of the other kind of rock stars in online business. So those episodes are really fun. I've interviewed Heather as well. You can go listen to our interview the other way over there, the Legal Roadmap podcast. And then on all the social, I'm just Autumn Witt Boyd.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
This was really fun. Thanks for asking great questions.
All right. That's it for this week, guys. That was so good. I love an action taker. So I hope that Autumn inspired you with putting herself out there, working through her fears, and really going after what she wanted. If you could use some help, some strategic help in going after what you want, a few options. One is you can actually apply for our highest level mastermind, and you can do that at 2020mastermindexperience.com. Or if you just need help with business development, we do that in small group workshops. And given where we are right now, we have some of those online. They are virtual as well, but the seating is still limited. I am really digging in. There is pre-homework. We work on your stuff together in there. And if you could really use that advanced strategy for what you're trying to do and what you want, I would love to see you in one of those workshops soon. And you can get that information at service-not-sales-workshop.com. And we'll put all of those links in the show notes. Have a great week, everyone. For show notes, downloads, and other free resources, and to keep the conversation going, head on over to hustleandflowpodcast.com. See you there.